Your sister died because of you. The mother's accusation at medical school graduation. When the dean called Grace Anderson to the stage to receive her medical degree, she never imagined her mother would burst through the auditorium doors screaming, "Your sister died because of you." The silence that followed was deafening. 500 people watching, cameras rolling. Grace, frozen at the podium in her white coat as Margaret climbed the steps, a flash drive in her hand. The sweet scent of floral arrangements mingled with the expensive perfume of the families in attendance. The fabric of her coat stuck to Grace's sweaty skin. Flashes went off from every direction. Her classmates whispered among themselves, some recording with their phones. Margaret wore a severe black dress, her graying hair pulled into a tight bun. Her hands trembled as she held the small device. Grace could feel her heart hammering against her ribs. The microphone picked up every ragged breath. Even the babies stopped crying. But Grace wasn't just there to graduate. 20 years earlier, she had made a solemn vow before her sister Lily's small white casket. She would save lives to make up for the ones she couldn't save. What no one knew was how exactly Lily had died that December afternoon, and why Grace had carried this guilt like an invisible scar for 2 decades. Dr. Richard Hayes tried to approach the stage because he knew the family's dark secrets and feared what was about to happen. Dr. Elizabeth Cole discreetly pointed her phone at the scene, because for years she had suspected there was more to this story than met the eye. Liam jumped out of his chair to support Grace because he loved her deeply and knew she carried a devastating trauma from her childhood. But this story didn't start here. It started 20 years ago when 2 sisters played innocently in the backyard of a simple house in San Diego. It started with a broken promise, a gate left open, and a child who never came home. The truth had layers that not even Grace herself fully understood. To understand how Grace arrived at this moment of public horror, you need to know 3 stories. The story of the afternoon when everything changed, the story of the secrets a family kept for 2 decades, and the story of how a flash drive would reveal truths no one was prepared to hear. It all began on a warm December afternoon when Grace was only 12 years old. Subscribe now and hit the bell so you don't miss a story that could change your perspective. Over 500,000 women are already part of our community. Be the next one. 6 months before graduation, Grace woke up every day at 5 a.m. Her 1-bedroom apartment in Boston's North End was simple, almost Spartan. White walls, minimal furniture, a desk overflowing with medical textbooks and anatomy charts. On the wall above her desk hung a single framed photograph, 2 smiling girls in an embrace. Lily was 8 in the picture. Grace was 10. The thin scar on Grace's left arm was her physical reminder of that day. She touched it unconsciously every morning when she woke up. Grace was known among her peers and professors as the perfect student. Flawless grades, never missed a class, always volunteering for extra shifts. But behind this obsessive dedication was a paralyzing fear of failure. Every patient she couldn't help during her clinical rotations made her relive that terrible afternoon. She compensated by studying to the point of exhaustion, reviewing protocols endlessly, checking and rechecking diagnoses. Her colleagues admired her discipline. None of them suspected the constant panic that drove her. The trauma Grace carried had deep roots. On that December afternoon 20 years ago, she was supposed to be looking after her younger sister. Their parents had gone out to run errands at the bank. Grace was 12, Lily only 8. The last thing Grace clearly remembered was watching television. Lily was playing in the yard. Then came the silence, the open gate, the despair of searching and not finding her. Hours later, police officers brought the devastating news. Lily had been found, lifeless. What Grace truly wanted, more than anything in the world, was to save at least one life as precious as the one she had lost. She daydreamed of the moment she would hold a newborn baby and hear its first cry. She kept an old stethoscope in a drawer, a gift from her late father symbolizing this impossible dream of redemption. Sometimes, late at night, Grace would hold it and weep silently. It was during a shift at the children's hospital that Grace met Liam. He was in his final year of pediatric residency. She was still a 3rd-year medical student. A 6-year-old girl had been admitted with a high fever and seizures. Grace watched intently as Liam examined the child with sure but gentle movements. He explained each step to the interns present, his voice calm, his hands steady. When the seizure passed and the child stabilized, Grace realized she had been holding her breath the entire time. "Are you new here?" Liam asked later as they washed their hands at a sink in the hallway. "I haven't seen you on the other shifts. First week in pediatrics." Grace Anderson. She extended her still damp hand. Liam Harris. "You looked more nervous than the patient's mother." He smiled, but it wasn't teasing. It was genuine kindness. "Kids make me nervous," Grace admitted. "That's why I chose pediatrics. I need to get over it." "Interesting. Most people choose pediatrics because they love kids. You chose it because you're afraid of them?" "Not afraid. Terrified of failing them." Liam studied her for a long moment. There was something in his eyes Grace couldn't quite decipher. Understanding, perhaps. Recognition. I get it more than you know. I'll let you in on a secret. I chose pediatrics for the wrong reasons, too. Or maybe the right ones, I'm not sure anymore. He paused. I lost my younger brother when I was 15, leukemia. I was by his side through the whole treatment. I saw amazing doctors save some kids. I saw others give up too soon. I swore I'd be different. Grace felt something break open inside her chest. Someone finally understood. I lost someone too. My sister. She was 8. The words tumbled out before Grace could stop them. I'm so sorry. Was it an illness? It was double quotes. Grace hesitated. It was my fault. Liam didn't press. He just nodded and changed the subject, offering to show her the best resources in the hospital's pediatric wing. But something had been planted in that moment. A silent connection between two doctors driven by guilt and redemption. In the weeks that followed, Grace and Liam spent more and more time together. He taught her practical techniques that textbooks didn't cover. How to soothe a crying baby. How to talk to desperate parents. How to recognize the subtle signs that something was wrong with a patient. And slowly, Grace began to trust him with fragments of her story. 3 months before graduation, during a particularly tough shift where they lost a 2-year-old patient, Grace finally promised Liam she would tell him the whole truth. After graduation, she said, when I have my degree, when I've proven I could do it, and then I'll tell you everything about Lily. Liam took her hand that night. I'll be here, no matter what you need to tell me. Harvard Medical School was a centuries-old institution in the heart of Boston. Marble corridors, antique stained-glass windows, a library filled with rare volumes. There was a strict, unwritten hierarchy among the students. Those from medical families were treated like academic royalty. Those who got in on their own merit, like Grace, had to work twice as hard to be taken seriously. The pressure was constant and silent like a poisonous gas. For Grace, every day at the school was a test. Every lecture, an opportunity to honor Lily's memory. She volunteered for the most difficult cases. She studied through the night. She turned down social invitations. Her classmates called her the medical monk behind her back. Grace knew, but she didn't care. Or she pretended not to. Her relationship with her mother, Margaret, had completely deteriorated in recent years. Margaret never recovered from Lily's death. She became a bitter, deeply religious woman who saw divine signs in everything. Every time Grace visited her at the old house in San Diego, there were candles lit for Lily, photos of the little girl in every room. Her bedroom preserved exactly as it had been 20 years ago. You're going to be a doctor, Margaret would always say with a strange mix of pride and resentment. Lily never got that chance. You have to live for both of you. Grace never knew how to respond. The weight of that expectation was suffocating. But in the last few months before graduation, something in Margaret had shifted. The phone calls became more frequent and strange. We need to talk about that day, she'd say. We need the truth. Grace always deflected, afraid of where those conversations would lead. Dr. Hayes, the dean of the school, also started acting strangely. He had been a doctor in San Diego 20 years ago. Grace had discovered this by chance while looking at old city newspapers. Whenever they passed in the hallways, he would avert his gaze. Once she overheard him remark to another professor, "That girl carries a burden that shouldn't be hers." 2 weeks before graduation, Grace realized something was definitely wrong. Margaret called 3 times in one day, insisting they needed to talk. When Grace finally answered, her mother's voice was different, determined, almost threatening. "I've kept something for all these years. A recording. You know what I'm talking about." "What recording, Mom?" "From the day Lily died. I never told you, but your father used to film everything back then. He had those old camcorders. He filmed the 2 of you playing that morning. And afterwards, afterwards he filmed other things." Grace's blood ran cold. "What other things?" "You'll find out soon enough. It's time for the truth, Grace. 20 years is too long to carry lies." The night before graduation, Grace was studying in her apartment when the doorbell rang. It was late, past 11. Through the window, she saw Margaret's car parked on the street. Her instinct screamed not to open the door. But she did. Margaret walked in uninvited. She looked as though she had aged 10 years since their last visit. She was carrying a worn leather handbag. "I came to bring you this." She pulled a flash drive from her bag. "Your graduation is tomorrow. You're going to get your degree. You're going to achieve your dream. But you need to know the truth first." "What truth? What are you talking about?" "Watch the drive. It's all there. Your father's recordings. What really happened that day. We'll talk after." Margaret left the flash drive on the table and walked out without another word. Grace stared at the small object as if it were a grenade about to explode. Part of her wanted to throw it away. But another part, the part that had spent 20 years punishing herself, needed to know. She didn't know it yet, but in the next 24 hours, every truth she knew about herself would be destroyed and rebuilt in a way she could never have imagined. It was precisely this fatal curiosity that would lead Grace the next day to make the most dangerous decision of her life. Tell me in the comments what city you're watching from right now. I read every single one and reply with love. Leave a like if this story is touching your heart. 3 hours after Margaret left, Grace was still sitting in her chair, staring at the flash drive on the table. Her hands were shaking. Cold sweat trickled down the back of her neck. She had already gotten up 3 times to pick it up, but always backed away at the last second. The graduation ceremony was in less than 12 hours. She should have been resting, preparing her speech, ironing her clothes. Instead, she was paralyzed by the fear of a truth she had been carrying for 2 decades. Finally, at 2 in the morning, Grace plugged the flash drive into her laptop. There were several video files. The first was dated 20 years ago, December 9th. Her hands were sweating so much she could barely control the mouse. She clicked. The shaky image from an old camera appeared on the screen. A sunny backyard, 2 little girls playing. Grace immediately recognized her childhood home in San Diego. In the recording, Lily was jumping rope, laughing. An older Grace was helping her count the jumps. 23, 24. The childish voices echoed through the yard. Then the camera turned to show her father's face. "My princesses," he said. "One day you'll watch this and laugh at how small you were." Grace closed her eyes. The pain was physical, visceral, like knives tearing open old scars. She paused the video. She couldn't continue. Not yet. She saved the file elsewhere, yanked the flash drive from the computer, and hid it in the back of a clothing drawer. Tomorrow, after graduation, after she finally got the degree she had promised Lily, then she would have the courage to face the past. But sleep wouldn't come. Grace spent the rest of the night lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the voices of the past echo in her head. At 5 a.m., she gave up on sleeping. She showered, dressed, and picked up her carefully pressed white coat, and she took the flash drive out again. Maybe she would need it. She wasn't sure why. Just a dark intuition. The ceremony was set to begin at 10. Grace arrived at the auditorium at 8:30. Classmates were already milling about, excited, families taking pictures. She looked for Liam and found him near the entrance, talking with other residents. When he saw her, his face lit up. "You're pale. Did you get any sleep?" "Not much. My mother showed up last night. It was strange." "Strange how?" Grace looked around. Too many people nearby. "I'll tell you later. It's complicated." But she didn't get the chance. Because at that moment, Margaret appeared at the entrance of the auditorium. She was wearing the same black dress from the night before, hair pulled back rigidly, eyes red from lack of sleep. When she saw Grace, she walked straight toward her with heavy, determined steps. "Did you watch it?" was all Margaret said. "No, I didn't have the courage." "Liar. You've always been a liar. Just like I have been all these years." Liam tried to intervene. "Mrs. Anderson, today is an important day for Grace. Perhaps you could talk later?" Margaret ignored him completely. "Where's the flash drive?" Grace instinctively touched the pocket where she had put it. "I have it, but I'm not watching it. You should. Before you get up on that stage and pretend you deserve that degree." The words hit Grace like physical blows. She felt her legs weaken. Liam held her by the arm. Other students started to notice the argument, forming a curious semicircle around them. "I do deserve this degree," Grace said, her voice low but firm. "I worked 6 years for it. I studied until I bled. I did everything right. You did everything wrong that day, and you never paid for it." The pain in Grace's chest was unbearable. 20 years of guilt, shame, self-punishment, 20 years of trying to atone, and it would never be enough. She had always known that. But hearing it from her own mother made it all too real. "I know I failed, Lily. I know it every single day of my life. That's why I became a doctor, to try and save other Lilies. Don't you think I've suffered enough?" "Suffering isn't paying. The truth is." Margaret turned and walked away, leaving Grace trembling in the middle of the hallway. Liam hugged her, but she could barely feel it. Dr. Cole watched everything from a distance, phone in hand. Dr. Hayes came running from the other side of the auditorium, a worried look on his face. "Grace, are you all right? Do you need anything?" He seemed genuinely concerned. "I'm fine. It's just my mother being difficult." "Your mother's going through a difficult time. We all are." Dr. Hayes chose his words carefully. "If you need to talk after the ceremony, my office is open." There was something in the way he said it, as if he knew exactly what Margaret was talking about, as if he, too, carried secrets about that terrible day. The ceremony began. Grace sat among the graduates trying to focus on the speeches, but her mind was trapped in a destructive loop. She replayed that afternoon over and over, trying to remember details. What exactly had happened? Lily was in the yard. Grace was in the living room. The gate was open. Grace had forgotten to close it. Lily got out and never came back. Or that's what Grace had always believed. But what if there was more? What if the flash drive showed something different? She touched her pocket again. The small device burned like hot coal. During the intermission, Grace locked herself in a restroom. She pulled out her phone, connected the flash drive with an adapter, and looked for the other files. There was a second video. Date: the same afternoon. Time: 3 p.m., 2 hours before Lily disappeared. She pressed play. The image was chaotic. The camera falling, catching strange angles. Muffled sound. Then her father's voice. "Grace, where's your sister?" Grace's own 12-year-old voice crying, "I don't know, Dad. She was right here. The gate is closed. I swear I closed it." More voices. Confusion. Sirens in the distance. The recording cut off. Grace felt the world spin. She had closed the gate. In that recording, she was absolutely certain. So how did Lily get out? How did everything fall apart? There was a third file. She didn't have the courage to open it. Not yet. She put everything away and walked back to the auditorium on unsteady legs. Liam was waiting for her with 2 cups of water. "You look terrible. Do you want me to call someone?" "No, I just need to get through this. It's just 2 more hours." But Grace had just discovered something that changed everything. She hadn't left the gate open, at least not at that moment. So what really happened? Who opened the gate? Or did Lily get out some other way? And more importantly, why did Margaret let her believe for 20 years that it was her fault? Anger began to build, slow, hot, burning away the guilt like acid. The ceremony resumed, names being called, applause, photos. Grace tried to pay attention, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought about Lily, the cheerful little girl who loved to jump rope, who wanted to be a ballerina, who made Grace laugh with silly impressions of their teachers. Lily deserved justice. She deserved the truth. 5 graduates before Grace, Dr. Hayes took the stage for a special address. "Medicine is a journey of knowledge and compassion," he began, "but it is also a journey of truth. We must have the courage to face difficult truths about our patients, about ourselves, about our past." He looked directly at Grace as he said it. It wasn't a coincidence. She was sure of it. 3 graduates before her, Margaret reappeared. This time she wasn't alone. She was carrying a laptop and a small projector. Dr. Cole saw her first and signaled to Dr. Hayes. He rushed down from the stage trying to intercept her. But Margaret was faster. "You all need to know the truth," she shouted, her voice echoing through the auditorium. "About the girl who's about to graduate, about what she did." Security guards approached, classmates recorded it all. Grace was frozen in her seat. Liam tried to stand up, but she held him back. Something inside her shifted at that moment. 20 years of guilt began to transform into something different. Anger, determination, a need for the truth, no matter the cost. "Let her," Grace whispered. "Let her talk. I want to hear what she has to say." Dr. Hayes managed to reach Margaret. "Please, Margaret, not here. Not like this. You always knew, Richard. You always knew, and you never did anything. You were there that day. You saw it." The auditorium erupted in murmurs. All eyes darted between Margaret, Dr. Hayes, and Grace. Phones recording. Social media live streaming. The moment going viral in real time. Dr. Hayes took a deep breath. His voice came out low, but the microphone picked it up. "You're right. I was there. And that's why I'm begging you. Don't do this here, for everyone's sake. For Lily's memory deserves justice. It deserves the truth." "That's not the same thing." That sentence froze Margaret. She looked at the flash drive in her hands. At Grace. Back at Dr. Hayes. Tears streamed down her face. 20 years. 20 years carrying this alone. Not alone. I carried it too. But that doesn't mean destroying Grace will solve anything. Grace couldn't take it anymore. She stood up from her chair, walked up the side steps of the stage, and went straight to the microphone. Her voice came out steady, clear, and fearless. "Mom, Dr. Hayes, everyone here, you want the truth? So do I. I've spent 20 years believing I killed my sister, that I left the gate open, that I was negligent, that I destroyed our family. I have carried that guilt every single day. I became a doctor because of it. I studied until I passed out because of it. I sacrificed everything because of it." She took a deep breath. 500 people waited in absolute silence. But today, 3 hours ago, I watched a recording my mother hid from me for 2 decades, and I discovered that I did close that gate. I didn't fail, at least not in the way I've always believed. So before I graduate, before I receive this degree, I need to know what really happened to Lily. Margaret collapsed into sobs. Dr. Hayes closed his eyes, defeated. And Grace, for the first time in 20 years, felt like she was in control. But what Grace didn't know was that the flash drive held more files. And in the next 40 minutes, each revelation would bring her closer to the devastating truth that no one was prepared to hear. The dean called for an emergency recess. He took Grace, Margaret, and Dr. Hayes to an administrative office at the back of the auditorium. Liam insisted on coming along, and Dr. Cole showed up, stating that as a witness she had a right to be present. No one had the energy to argue. The six of them settled into the cramped room. Margaret clutched the laptop like a shield. Grace sat stiffly in her chair, Liam by her side. "Let's handle this civilly," the dean began. "Margaret, what exactly do you want?" "I want everyone to know the truth. 20 years of lies is enough." Grace leaned forward. "Then tell it. Tell me what really happened. Why'd you let me believe it was my fault?" Margaret looked at the flash drive, then at her daughter. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with old pain. "Because it was easier to blame you than to accept the truth. Because I blamed myself too. Because your father made me promise I would never tell." "Dad knew? About what?" Dr. Hayes intervened. "I can explain. But you need to understand the full context. Liam, you said you lost a brother to leukemia. That gives you perspective. Lily was sick too. Only no one knew it yet." Grace felt the floor drop out from under her. "What? Sick? How?" "Lily had an undiagnosed congenital heart condition. Catecholaminergic polymorphic ventricular tachycardia. It's rare. Hard to detect in children without obvious symptoms. She could have lived for years without knowing. Or she could have a fatal event at any moment, triggered by extreme physical or emotional stress." Liam closed his eyes. He knew the condition. Grace did too, from her textbooks. But hearing it applied to her sister was different. "Are you saying Lily died because of that, not because she got lost?" "She did get lost, yes. But she didn't die from being lost. She died because her heart stopped while she was running in a panic, trying to find her way home." Margaret was sobbing silently. Grace was in shock, processing. 20 years. 20 years carrying the guilt for something she hadn't caused. Something no one could have predicted or prevented. "I was there," Dr. Hayes continued. "I was on call in the ER in San Diego that night. When they brought Lily in, she'd been in arrest for over 15 minutes. We tried to resuscitate her for 40 minutes. We couldn't. At the autopsy, we discovered the condition. I explained everything to your parents. Your father understood it was a tragedy. Your mother. Margaret needed someone to blame. And you chose me," Grace said to her mother, her voice flat. "You let me think I killed my sister. I didn't choose," Margaret exploded. "You took the blame yourself. You kept saying you forgot the gate, that it was your fault. Your father said we should tell you the truth, but I thought it would be easier this way. That you'd get over it." "Get over it?" Grace laughed bitterly. "I destroyed myself trying to make up for it. I became a doctor out of guilt. I studied until I collapsed out of guilt. I never let myself be happy because of guilt." Liam gently touched her arm but said nothing. Dr. Cole was silently taking notes in a corner. The dean massaged his temples. "There's more," Margaret said quietly. "On the drive. There are other things you need to see. Things your father recorded. Things that I did." Grace looked at the device with a new sense of dread. "What things?" "Watch it. Alone. Then you can decide what you want to do." Dr. Cole spoke for the first time. "With all due respect, Margaret, but you no longer have the right to control this narrative. Grace deserves to see it, but we all deserve context. You created a public spectacle. Now you need to finish it." Margaret pressed her lips into a thin line. For a long moment it seemed she would refuse. Then she opened the laptop and clicked on the third file. "This was recorded 3 days after the funeral. Your father didn't know that I knew he was filming." The screen showed the living room of their old house. A younger Margaret sitting on the couch holding a picture of Lily. Grace recognized the scene. She had been there too, just out of frame. The camera picked up her 12-year-old voice. "Mom, it was my fault. I should have taken better care of her." And then came Margaret's response, brutal and cold. "Yes, it was. You killed your sister, and you'll have to live with that for the rest of your life." The room fell into absolute silence. On the recording, the child version of Grace began to cry. The camera shook and then shut off. In the present, the adult Grace was as pale as a sheet. Liam was gripping her hand tightly. Dr. Hayes looked at Margaret with something approaching disgust. "You made a child believe she was a murderer," Grace said slowly. "A child who was already destroyed by loss. You deliberately planted that guilt. I was grieving. I wasn't thinking straight. You were being selfish. You chose to destroy your living daughter rather than deal with your own pain." Margaret had no answer. Tears were streaming, but they elicited no sympathy. Liam broke the silence. "I understand grief. When I lost my brother Lucas, my parents got divorced. My mom fell into a deep depression. My dad buried himself in work. I was basically alone at 15. It took me years of therapy to understand that I wasn't responsible for healing Lucas, or for healing my parents. Everyone had their own pain, and they needed to process it their own way, but no one ever blamed me. And that makes all the difference. He looked at Grace. You were robbed of the chance to grieve naturally. You were forced to carry a weight that should never have been yours. That's not grief. That's abuse. The word hung in the air like toxic smoke. Abuse. Grace had never thought of it in those terms. But it was right. Margaret had emotionally abused her for 2 decades. Are there more files? Grace asked, her voice controlled. Margaret nodded. 3. They're recordings your father made. He kept a kind of diary after Lily died, talking about the pain. About you. About me. He died 6 months later. A heart attack. I found these recordings 5 years ago when I was cleaning out the attic. I watched all of them, and I finally understood what I had done to you. Why did you wait another 5 years to tell me? Because I'm a coward. Because I was afraid of your anger. Because it was easier to keep pretending. But when I saw you were graduating from medical school, that you were going to achieve the dream Lily never had a chance to, I couldn't pretend anymore. You deserved to know before you walked onto that stage. So your plan was to publicly destroy me minutes before my graduation. My plan was to give you the flash drive yesterday. It was up to you what to do. But when I saw you today, so confident, so proud, something in me snapped. I thought she's going to go through her whole life without knowing the truth. She'll live a lie, like I have. Dr. Cole intervened again. May I make an observation? I've been teaching medicine for 25 years. I've seen hundreds of students. Grace was always different. Hyper-competent but self-destructive. A pathological perfectionist. I suspected trauma, but I never imagined this dimension. What you did, Margaret, created a technically brilliant but emotionally damaged doctor. She will save lives. But at what cost to herself? The question went unanswered. Grace was breathing deeply, trying to process decades of deception. Liam was rubbing her back in slow circles. Dr. Hayes finally spoke. I share some of the blame in this. When I came to work at this school 3 years ago and saw Grace Anderson's name on the student list, I knew who she was immediately. I looked up her records. I saw her perfect grades, her obsessive dedication, and I recognized the signs of someone trying to atone for guilt. I should have spoken to you. I should have told you what I knew about Lily, but I didn't have the courage. And now here we all are in this mess. Grace looked at each person in the room. It all failed her in some way. Her mother, most obviously. But Dr. Hayes by omission. Even Liam, who knew of her trauma but never pressed for details. They had all kept a convenient distance from the truth. I want to see the other files, Grace said finally, but not here. Not with you. I'm going home. I'll watch them alone, and then I'll decide what to do. And the graduation? The dean asked. To hell with the graduation. I spent 6 years working for a degree I thought I owed to Lily's memory. Now I find out Lily died of natural causes, that I don't owe anyone anything. So I need to decide, do I want to be a doctor for myself or only because of the guilt? She stood up. Liam stood with her. I'm coming with you. No, I need to be alone. Grace, please. 20 years processing a lie. I need time to process the truth. Margaret held out the laptop. Take it. Watch everything. Then we'll talk. I don't know if I ever want to talk to you again. The coldness in Grace's voice made Margaret flinch as if she'd been slapped, but she deserved it. Everyone knew it. Grace took the laptop, walked to the door, and paused. Dr. Hayes, you said you tried to resuscitate Lily for 40 minutes. That's well above standard protocol. She was a child. I couldn't give up. Thank you for trying. Even though you didn't succeed, you tried. That's more than my own mother did for me. Grace walked out. Liam waited 30 seconds and followed her. Dr. Cole started asking technical questions about Lily's heart condition. Margaret broke down in convulsive sobs. The dean called the communications office, asking for an official statement postponing the remaining graduation ceremonies. Outside, the auditorium was in a state of controlled chaos. Classmates were speculating. Families were complaining. Social media was exploding with theories. Grace ignored it all, walking straight to the parking lot. Liam caught up with her. I know you asked to be alone, but I'm not letting you drive in this state. Give me the keys. Grace didn't have the energy to argue. She handed him the keys. In the car, they sat in silence for 10 minutes. Then Liam spoke. When Lucas died, I spent months wanting to die too. It seemed fair. He was younger, more innocent, better than me in every way. Why did I survive and not him? I went to therapy for 3 years before I accepted that there's no answer. Tragedies happen, kids die. There's no cosmic justice, just ... chance. Grace looked out the window. Lily was 8. She wanted to be a ballerina. She used to do pirouettes all over the house. My dad said she'd be famous one day. And then she just ... stopped. One moment she was alive, the next she wasn't. How do you process that? You don't. You learn to live with the void. But Grace, you have an advantage I didn't. You found out it wasn't your fault. I never had any guilt to carry. You did, and now you can let that weight go. You can finally be free. I don't know how to be free. I only know how to be guilty. They arrived at Grace's apartment. Liam insisted on coming up with her. He made tea, sat next to her on the couch. Grace opened the laptop with trembling hands and clicked on the fourth file. Her father's face appeared on the screen. He looked like he had aged 10 years in a few days. He was in the study of their old house. Date: 1 week after the funeral. I don't know who I'm recording this for, he began. Maybe for myself, maybe for my daughters in the future. Lily is gone. I still can't believe it. 8 years old. My little ballerina. The doctor said it was her heart. A condition no one knew she had. It could have happened at any time. In her sleep. At school. While playing. It wasn't anyone's fault. He took a long pause. But Margaret won't accept that. She needs someone to blame. And she's chosen Grace, our living daughter, who is also suffering, who lost her sister and best friend. I tried to talk to Margaret yesterday. I told her we need to protect Grace, not destroy her. She screamed that I didn't understand her pain, that I hadn't lost what she had lost, as if Lily was only hers. In the living room, Grace was clutching her teacup so tightly her knuckles were white. Liam placed his hand over hers. The father in the recording continued. If anyone ever sees this in the future, especially you, Grace, please know, nothing that happened was your fault. You were a child. You took care of your sister as best you could. The gate was closed. I saw it. I checked afterwards. Lily probably climbed over or found another way out. Kids do that. They explore. They have adventures. No one can watch them 24 hours a day. And even if we could, her heart was a time bomb. It was only a matter of time. Grace began to cry silently. Liam held her. On the screen, her father was wiping away his own tears. I'm going to try to protect you, Grace. I'm going to try to make Margaret understand. But I'm tired. My chest hurts constantly. The doctor says it's stress. Told me to get some tests. I will. I promise. For you. Because I need to be here to make sure you grow up knowing you are loved. That it wasn't your fault. That you deserve to be happy. The recording ended. The fifth file began automatically. Same room. 2 weeks later, her father looked even worse. Margaret and I had another fight. She wants to send Grace to her aunt's house. Says she can't look at her without seeing Lily. I refused. Grace is staying with us. But I don't know how much longer I can hold this family together. I feel like we're falling apart. The sixth and final file was recorded 5 months after the funeral. I finally got the tests. The doctor said my heart is failing. Stress, they said. Grief. They suggested therapy, medication. I'm not going to do any of it. I'm tired. Lily's gone. Margaret hates me. Grace is withdrawing more and more. She's become a silent, frightened little girl. I try to talk to her, but she won't speak. She just studies. Says she's going to be a doctor when she grows up. To save people. She's 11 years old, and she's already planning her entire life based on guilt. He took a heavy breath. If I'm not here to protect her, I hope someone is. That someone tells her the truth. That someone helps her understand it wasn't her fault, please. She doesn't deserve to carry this. The screen went black. Grace closed the laptop. For long minutes, she said nothing, just cried. Liam held her. When she finally spoke, her voice was hoarse. My dad knew. He knew exactly what was going to happen to me. And he tried to protect me. But he died before he could. He loved you. That's clear. And my mother hated me. That's clear too. I don't know if it was hate. I think it was twisted grief. But it doesn't matter. What she did was wrong. Unforgivable. Grace wiped her face. I need to decide what to do now. What do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to go back there and confront my mother publicly. Show everyone these videos. Expose what she did. But another part just wants to ... leave. Start over somewhere else. Forget everything, Liam thought before answering. Neither. You need to confront her, yes, but not for revenge. For the truth. Your father asked for someone to tell the truth. You can do that. But on your own time, when you're ready. But Grace didn't know that her mother was already preparing the final phase of her plan. And in less than 24 hours, the rest of the truth would be revealed in the most brutal way possible. Grace spent the night rewatching the recordings. Each time she heard her father's voice, something inside her broke and was simultaneously rebuilt. Liam stayed with her silent, present. At 4 a.m. she finally closed the laptop and looked at him. My entire life has been a lie. I chose medicine out of guilt. I became this person obsessed with perfection out of guilt. I never allowed myself to make a mistake, to relax, to be happy. All for a guilt that was never real. She laughed bitterly. You know what's most painful? I was a good doctor. I could have just been that. But now it's all tainted. Every time I save a child, I'll wonder, am I doing it for them or for Lily's ghost? Liam held her face in his hands. Listen, you may have started for the wrong reasons, but you became a doctor for the right ones. I've seen you with patients. I've seen your genuine compassion, your dedication. You're not acting caring. You genuinely care. That doesn't change because of what you've found out. But how do I trust myself now? How do I know what's real? By giving it time. By going to therapy. By rebuilding your identity. It won't be quick, but you can do it. Grace wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her like acid. 20 years building an identity on a false foundation. How do you rebuild that? At 7 a.m. her phone rang. It was Dr. Hayes. The school has decided to reschedule your graduation. Just you. A private ceremony. No guests. You can come pick up your degree today at 2 p.m. if you'd like. No pressure, and if I don't, then we'll wait. Or we'll mail it to you. It's your decision. Grace hung up. She looked at the white coat hanging on her chair, a symbol of 6 years of sacrifice, of studying until her gums bled, of 30-hour shifts, of giving up friendships, relationships, a life, all for a piece of paper that would prove she had atoned for Lily's death. But Lily hadn't died because of her. So did the degree still mean anything? I'm going to get it, she said finally. Not for Lily, not out of guilt, but because I deserve it. I worked for this. Regardless of the initial reasons, I earned this right. Liam smiled. That's a start. At 11 a.m., Margaret showed up at the door. Grace almost didn't open it, but something in her needed to hear what her mother had to say. She let her in. Liam discreetly went to the bedroom, giving them privacy. Margaret looked like she had aged 10 years overnight. Deep, dark circles under her eyes, hands trembling. When she spoke, her voice was broken. I watched them again last night. All of your father's recordings. I hadn't seen them in 5 years. I'd forgotten what he was like, how much he loved us, how he tried to save us. Grace crossed her arms. She wasn't going to make this easy. Your father was right about everything. I chose to destroy you because it was easier than facing my own pain. You were a child, vulnerable, dependent on me, and I used that, turned you into a vessel for my guilt, my anger, my grief. I made you carry what I should have carried alone. Why? Why did you choose to hurt me instead of protect me? Margaret took a deep breath. Because when I looked at you, I saw everything Lily would never be. Every year you got older, Lily stayed frozen at 8. You turned 15, she was still 8. You graduated high school, she was still 8. And at every milestone in your life, I died inside remembering what Lily had lost. Then you should have sent me away, not tortured me. I know, but part of me couldn't let you go. You were all I had left, and I needed you to suffer because I was suffering. It's cruel, unjustifiable, monstrous, but it's the truth. Grace felt sick. Hearing it spelled out was worse than imagining it. Did you apologize to my father when he was dying in the hospital? Margaret closed her eyes. He died alone. I was at home, drunk. I didn't answer when the hospital called. By the time I got there, he was already gone. Another guilt that I carry. You have a lot of guilt, Mom, but instead of processing it, you spread it to me. And you destroyed 2 lives instead of 1. I know, and I don't expect forgiveness. I only came to tell you the truth, and to give you this. Margaret pulled an envelope from her purse. Inside were old documents, medical files, Lily's autopsy report. It's a report from Dr. Hayes. Everything proving the heart condition. Everything showing there was no negligence, no crime, no fault. Just an unpredictable medical tragedy. I kept this for 20 years. Your father wanted you to see it when you were older. I hid it. Today I'm returning what is rightfully yours. Grace took the papers with trembling hands. Reading the medical terminology about her sister was surreal. Catecholaminergic polymorphic ventricular tachycardia, RYR2 gene mutation, not diagnosable without specific testing, unpredictable prognosis. Technical words to say no one could have saved Lily. One last thing, Margaret said. I'm getting out of your life, not because you asked, but because it's what I have to do. I've done enough damage. I'm moving back to San Diego. I'm going into intensive therapy. I'm going to try to process what I did. If one day, years from now, you want to talk to me, I'll be there, but I won't seek you out. You deserve peace. Grace said nothing. Margaret nodded, taking the silence as an answer, and left. Liam came back from the room when he heard the door close. How are you doing? Empty. Exhausted. Relieved? I don't know. 2 hours later, Grace was in the dean's office at the medical school. Just her, Dr. Hayes, and Dr. Cole as witnesses. No gowns, no ceremony, no pomp. He handed her the diploma. Grace Anderson, by academic merit and demonstrated competence, you have earned the degree of Doctor of Medicine. Congratulations. Grace held the paper. It weighed less than she had imagined. Or maybe she was stronger. Can I say something? Dr. Hayes asked. Off the record? Grace nodded. You are going to be an exceptional doctor. It's not in spite of what you've been through, but including it. You know, pain, loss, trauma, guilt, redemption. That makes you capable of understanding patients on levels that technically perfect doctors will never reach. Don't waste that, but don't let it define you either. How do I do that? How do I separate them? Therapy, time, patience, and by always remembering you're not the 12-year-old girl who lost her sister. You're the 32-year-old woman who survived, grew, and became a doctor against all odds, Dr. Cole added. And when you doubt yourself, remember that hundreds of future patients are alive because you didn't give up, because you turned pain into purpose. Even if the initial purpose was distorted, the result is real. Lives saved are lives saved, regardless of the motivation. Grace folded the diploma carefully and put it in her bag. Thank you for everything, especially for not giving up on me yesterday. We never would, Dr. Hayes said. You're one of the best we've ever had. Grace left the school with conflicting emotions. Relief at finally knowing the truth, anger at being deceived, grief for a stolen childhood, and a terrifying fear of the uncertain future. Who was she without guilt defining her every choice? Liam was waiting for her outside. What now? Now I need to find out who I am. The real Grace, not the one built on lies, and honestly, I have no idea who she is. Then we'll find out together. No rush, one day at a time. That evening, Grace did something she hadn't done in 20 years. She went to the cemetery. Lily's grave, small and white. She knelt and touched the cold stone. Hi, Lily. It's been a while. I didn't come because I thought you hated me, that you blamed me. But now I know it wasn't like that. You didn't die because of me, your heart just stopped. It could have happened 1,000 different ways. And none of them would have been my fault. Or yours. It just ... happened. The words came out haltingly, broken. I graduated from medical school today. Would you be proud? I hope so. I'm going to try to be a good doctor, not to make up for your death, but because I think it's what I want to do. I'm not sure yet, but I'm going to find out. Grace stayed there for an hour, talking to her dead sister, saying things she had held in for 2 decades, apologizing for not coming sooner, promising not to let guilt control her life anymore. When she stood up, she felt different, lighter, as if a physical weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Liam was waiting in the car. Are you okay? Yeah. For the first time in 20 years, I think I am. But as Grace was beginning to process and heal, Margaret in San Diego was making a final decision. She was typing furiously at her computer, preparing a document, a full account, everything that happened. The lies, the abuse, her dead husband's recordings, the truth about Lily, everything. And then she hit send to every major news outlet in Boston, with copies of the recordings attached. The email subject line, Mother confesses, 20 years of psychological abuse. After tragic death, she knew it would destroy any chance of reconciliation with Grace, but she also knew it was the only way to ensure the truth wouldn't be buried again. That Grace would have public, unquestionable evidence of what happened. That no one could ever question her version of events again. It was the last thing Margaret could do for her daughter. It wasn't redemption, but it was something. And the next morning when Grace woke up, she discovered that her story had gone national. The final confrontation was about to begin, and all the consequences of 20 years of lies would finally emerge under the unforgiving light of public scrutiny. Grace woke up to dozens of messages on her phone. Liam, Dr. Hayes, Dr. Cole, classmates who had never spoken to her, all sending links. When she opened the first one, her heart stopped. A national headline, newly graduated doctor reveals 2 decades of psychological abuse after sister's tragic death. The article had everything. Her father's recordings, Margaret's confessional statement, even clips from the confrontation at the graduation filmed by someone and leaked. Grace read in growing shock. Her most painful private life laid bare for millions of people, thousands of comments, some supportive, others cruel. She's just looking for attention. She made it all up to go viral. The mother clearly has mental issues, and the daughter is exploiting it. Liam arrived half an hour later. He let himself in, found her sitting on the living room floor, phone in hand, silent tears streaming down her face. She did this. My mother exposed everything. Why? Why couldn't she just leave and let me have peace? Maybe she thought it was the only way to guarantee the truth wouldn't be buried again, that you'd have public, irrefutable proof. But I didn't want public proof. I wanted privacy. I wanted to process this on my own time. Now the entire country is judging my life. The phone rang. An unknown number. Grace answered against her better judgment. It was a TV show producer. Grace, We'd love to have you on the show tomorrow. 2 million viewers. Your chance to tell your side of the story. She hung up without answering. More calls. Journalists, podcasters, even a literary agent wanting to turn her story into a book. Grace blocked all unknown numbers. I have to make this stop, she said. I have to take control of the narrative. How? By giving them what they want. A statement. But on my terms. Grace spent the next 2 hours writing. Liam read over her shoulder, offering suggestions. When it was ready, Grace posted it on all her social media accounts. She didn't have many followers, but she knew the media was watching. My name is Grace Anderson. I am a newly graduated doctor. The story that has gone viral in the last few hours is true, but it is incomplete. Yes, my mother made me believe for 20 years that I caused the death of my sister Lily. Yes, that has shaped my entire life. But there is missing context. My mother was destroyed by grief. She made terrible decisions in a state of unimaginable pain. This does not excuse what she did, but it does humanize it, she continued. Discovering the truth has been both liberating and devastating. Liberating because I finally know I was not responsible. Devastating because it means I became a doctor for distorted reasons. Now I need to decide who I am without this guilt defining me. And I need to do it without cameras, interviews, or comments from strangers. I am asking for privacy. I am asking for compassion. And I ask that you remember, behind every viral story are real people with real pain, trying to survive. Within 2 hours, the post had 100,000 shares. The tone of the comments shifted, more solidarity, less judgment, but some media outlets kept pushing. A major morning show sent a crew to the door of Grace's building. They're not going to stop, Liam said. Not unless you give them one definitive interview. Close the story. Make it clear there's nothing more to say. Grace thought about it. He was right. The more she refused, the more they would pursue her. But I choose where and how. Not on a TV show. Not a media circus, Dr. Hayes called, offering the school as a venue. We can arrange a controlled press conference. You speak for 20 minutes. You answer a few pre-approved questions, and that's it. They'll have the material they need. You'll have said what you need to say, and everyone can move on. Grace accepted. They scheduled it for the next day at 4 p.m. in the school auditorium, the very place where everything had exploded. The next morning, Margaret called. Grace almost didn't answer, but something in her needed to hear her. I saw your post. I saw that you defended me, even after everything I did. I didn't defend you. I provided context. There's a difference. Why? Why didn't you just destroy me publicly? I deserved it. Grace took a deep breath, because destruction doesn't heal anyone. You taught me that the hard way. I'm not going to repeat your mistake. You're a better person than I ever was. No, I'm just tired of carrying anger. I already carried guilt for 2 decades. I'm not going to spend the next 2 carrying hate. Will you ever forgive me? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I'm going to try to understand you. And maybe that will be enough. Margaret cried on the other end of the line. When she composed herself, she said, I'll be watching your press conference tomorrow. Not in person. I won't embarrass you, but I'll be watching. And I want you to know, I'm proud of the woman you've become, in spite of me. Or maybe because of the obstacles I put in your way. I don't know, but I'm proud. It was the first time in 20 years Margaret had said that. Grace hung up without responding. She didn't know what to feel. Anger, relief, sadness, all mixed together in a knot that was impossible to untangle. 4 p.m. arrived too quickly. The auditorium was packed with journalists. Cameras everywhere. Grace walked in with Liam by her side. Dr. Cole and Dr. Hayes flanked the stage like a silent guard. Grace approached the microphone. Her hands were shaking. Her voice threatened to fail, but she began, Thank you for coming. I will make a brief statement and answer a few questions. After that, I will not be speaking publicly about this again. My story has become national entertainment. That was not my choice. But now that it's out there, I want to make sure you understand it completely. She told them everything. The afternoon Lily died. The 20 years of guilt. The discovery of the flash drive, her father's recordings, her mother's confession, the undiagnosed heart condition. Every word was a stab into open wounds, but it was also cathartic, like draining poison from an old infection. The question everyone is asking is, will I press charges against my mother? The answer is no. She did me a terrible harm. But she was a woman destroyed by grief, making destructive decisions. Punishing her won't heal me. It won't bring Lily back. It won't give me back my childhood. It only perpetuates a cycle of pain. A journalist raised a hand. But what about justice? Shouldn't she pay? She is paying. Every day. With the weight of her conscience. With the loss of her daughter. Of me. With the knowledge of what she did. That is punishment enough. Another question. Do you still want to be a doctor? Or was it all based on a lie? Grace paused. It was the question she'd been asking herself. I started medicine for the wrong reasons, but I discovered along the way that I genuinely love it. I love helping patients. I love solving diagnostic puzzles. I love that moment when a sick child finally smiles. So yes, I'm going to continue. But now for myself, not for ghosts. And your mother. Will you reconcile? I don't know. Maybe with time. Maybe never. Relationships aren't obligated to be saved just because they're family. Sometimes distance is healing. Time will tell. Last question, Doctor. Hayes interjected, protecting Grace from going on too long. A journalist in the back raised a hand. What would you say to people going through similar situations? Carrying guilt for things that may not be their fault. Grace smiled for the first time. Seek the truth, no matter how painful it is. Because living a lie is worse than facing a brutal reality. And remember, undiagnosed guilt is like an untreated disease. It only gets worse with time. Get help. Go to therapy. Talk to people you trust. Don't carry alone what isn't yours to carry. Applause echoed through the auditorium. Grace stepped down from the stage and left through a side door. Liam, Dr. Hayes, and Dr. Cole escorted her to the car. Cameras tried to follow, but security blocked them. In the car, Grace finally breathed. It's over. It's finally over. There's still a long road ahead, Liam said gently. But the worst is over. Will you stay with me? On that road? Every step. If you'll have me. Grace took his hand. For the first time in 20 years, she allowed herself to imagine a future without guilt defining every choice. A future with a healthy relationship. With a career for the right reasons. With peace. It wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks. Moments of doubt. Nightmares about Lily. Anger resurfacing toward Margaret. But for the first time, she had the tools to deal with it. She had the truth as her foundation. She had people who genuinely supported her. 3 weeks later, Grace started intensive therapy, 2 sessions a week, unpacking 20 years of trauma, rebuilding her identity, learning to separate who she was from who she thought she was supposed to be. Margaret kept her promise. She didn't try to make contact. She sent only one letter, a month later. I've started therapy too. I'm finally facing what I've always avoided. Thank you for forcing me to do this. And I'm sorry I didn't do it decades ago. If and when you want to talk, I'll be here, but I'll understand if you never do. I love you. I always have. I just didn't know how to show it in a healthy way. Grace put the letter in a drawer. She didn't reply, but she didn't throw it away either. Maybe one day. Maybe. Liam officially asked Grace out 2 months later. She said yes, because she needed him to define herself, but because she genuinely wanted him in her life. It was different. Healthy, based on choice, not need. And when Grace finally began her residency in pediatrics, 3 months after her turbulent graduation, she treated her first patient alone. An 8-year-old girl with a high fever, the same age Lily had been when she died. Grace examined her with steady hands, asked the right questions, diagnosed a treatable bacterial infection, prescribed antibiotics, and when the fever broke 2 hours later and the little girl smiled, Grace knew she wasn't saving Lily. She was saving this child for this child's sake, because it was the right thing to do, because she loved medicine, because she was good at it. And for the first time in 20 years, Grace Anderson allowed herself to feel genuine pride. But the story doesn't end with a victory, because 6 months later, the long-term consequences of that public revelation were still echoing in unexpected ways. 6 months after the press conference, Grace was in her pediatric office at Mass General Hospital, no longer as a resident, as an attending physician. Her own office small but functional, the walls decorated with drawings from patients. A framed photo on her desk, her and Liam at the public garden smiling genuinely. Her father's stethoscope hanging on the wall, no longer hidden in a drawer of shame but displayed with pride. Therapy continued. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m., Dr. Evans, a psychologist specializing in trauma, helped her untangle 20 years of distortions. Some sessions were productive. Others were too painful to process, but Grace always showed up. She did the work. Little by little, she was rebuilding her foundations on solid ground. Liam had proposed in the 4th month. She had asked for time. Not because she didn't love him, but because she needed to be sure she was saying yes to the right person for the right reasons. 2 months later, when he asked again, she answered without hesitation, yes. They planned a simple wedding for the following year. Few guests, a quiet ceremony, no spotlight. Dr. Hayes had become Grace's official mentor. They had lunch every other week discussing complex cases. He shared decades of experience. She brought a fresh, updated perspective. The friendship born from tragedy had transformed into a valuable professional partnership. He never mentioned that terrible day in San Diego again. He didn't have to. They had both made their peace with the past, Dr. Cole published an academic paper on trauma and professional choices using Grace's story as an anonymous case study. Grace read it and authorized its publication. If her pain could educate future doctors about compassion and human complexity, it would be worth something. Margaret remained in San Diego. Therapy 3 times a week. She joined a support group for bereaved parents. She started volunteering at a children's shelter, trying to channel her unexpressed love toward children who needed it. She sent short texts to Grace once a month. "Thinking of you today. Hope you're well." Grace sometimes replied. Sometimes she didn't, but she no longer had her number blocked. It was progress. On a rainy afternoon in June, Grace saw a 7-year-old girl. Persistent fever, abdominal pain. The mother was frantic with worry. Grace calmly examined her, ordered tests, and diagnosed an early-stage appendicitis. Quick intervention prevented complications. When the surgery was over and successful, the mother hugged Grace, crying, "You saved my daughter." "I don't know how to thank you." Grace smiled. "I was just doing my job, but I'm glad you came in time." As the mother went back to her daughter's room, Grace stood in the hallway, processing. That moment, that gratitude, that life saved. It had nothing to do with Lily. It had to do with medicine, with competence, with being in the right place, doing the right thing. She finally understood. She could honor Lily's memory without being defined by her death. She could be a good doctor without using guilt as fuel. The two things could coexist separately. That night, Grace did something she hadn't done in years. She wrote a letter to Lily. Not on paper, on her phone, but she put into words everything she felt. "Lily, you'd be 30 now. Would you be the famous ballerina you dreamed of? Or would you have changed your mind and become something else? I'll never know. And I've learned that it's okay not to know. You existed, you were loved, you left a mark. Your death wasn't anyone's fault, it was a medical tragedy, and I've finally made my peace with that. I still miss you. I always will. But I no longer let that missing destroy me. I hope that wherever you are, you're proud of me. Not for the medicine, but for surviving, for finding the truth, for choosing life instead of guilt. I love you, I always will. But now I can love you and love my life too, both at the same time." Grace never sent the letter. She didn't need to. Writing it was enough. 1 year after that turbulent graduation, the school held a new ceremony. They invited Grace to be the keynote speaker. She accepted. She stood on the same stage where everything had exploded, but this time, in complete control. "When I stood on this stage a year ago," she began, "I thought I was here out of duty, for atonement, out of guilt. I discovered I was wrong. But I also discovered something more important. Even when we start for the wrong reason, we can find true purpose along the way. So to the graduates today, it doesn't matter so much why you chose medicine. It matters who you become while practicing it. Be compassionate. Be humble. And always remember, behind every patient is a complex story you may never fully know. Respect that." The applause was genuine. Warm. Grace stepped down and found Liam waiting with flowers. Next to him, unexpectedly, stood Margaret. They shared a long look. Then Margaret opened her arms. Grace hesitated for only a second before accepting the hug. "I'm proud of you," Margaret whispered. "Your father would be too." "I know," Grace replied, and for the first time she truly believed it. Walking out of the auditorium, Grace looked back one last time. That place held so much pain, but also rebirth. She wouldn't be who she was without everything that had happened there. And finally, she was at peace with it. Life doesn't always offer perfectly happy endings, but it offers new beginnings. It offers choices. It offers the chance to rewrite the narratives that others have imposed on us. Grace chose to rewrite hers. She chose to be more than her trauma, more than her guilt, more than a victim. She chose to be simply Grace. Dr. Fiancé, the complicated daughter of a complicated mother. Sister to a girl who died too young. A survivor of 2 decades of lies. All of these things together. None of them defining her completely. All of them contributing to the complexity that made her human. Real. Alive. And you? Have you ever carried a guilt that you later discovered wasn't yours? Have you ever spent years building a life on a false foundation, only to find out that everything you believed was wrong? Have you ever had to rebuild your identity from scratch as an adult? Share your experience in the comments. Your words might be exactly what another woman needs to hear today. Your story could save someone from the same destructive path. Never underestimate the power of shared truth to heal collective wounds. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your like. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to start over. Next week, a new story. When we discover that the people we trusted most were keeping secrets that would change everything. Remember, you are not defined by the worst moments of your life. You are defined by how you choose to rebuild yourself after them. See you soon.